Welcome back to the Secret Sauce Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Summers. My co-host is Sierra Romero, Hall of Famer. And we have Bailey Victoria, strength and conditioning coach at Florida State University, on the podcast with us today. So tell us a little bit about your background, how you became strength coach at Florida State.
For sure. I'm actually born and raised Iowan, so grew up in Iowa, really, really small town. I played 4 sports growing up, so always just been super passionate about sports in general. Played college softball, and then after that is when I started noticing how much athletic performance was really shaping me as an athlete. We had a strength coach came in that was from Auburn that just blew me away with what he was able to do with my body and made me such a better softball player. And then creating relationships with athletes just like makes me so happy. Like coaching is the very best part of my job, and so I love being around athletes of all different sports. So I was able to get an internship at Florida State University because the director at Florida State is actually a female, which I thought was super, super rare in the field. And I was like, I want to go learn from somebody that's just like that so she can kind of mold me into the person I want to be. So I went to Florida State, fell in love with the place. All the people were just so spectacular. So stayed and got my master's there. Ended up leaving, taking a job in New York for a little while, and then saw that the job working with softball at Florida State University became available, and working with a head coach like Lonnie Alameda was next level for me, and so took that step to come back to Florida State. So it's a really brief how I got here.
So Florida State was your first internship then after you graduated?
After I graduated, yeah, Florida State was the first place I went, and it'll be the place that I am. It's a special one.
What's different about the training at Florida State? Because I think we all have talked about it. I feel like it's like a well-known thing in softball world. The Florida State athletes are usually built a little bit different. Like I feel like the team is usually very fit. Like they all not look the same, but like they have that certain like body structure type.
Yeah.
They're kind of like Clemson, right? Clemson has that too. Like I feel like there's certain teams that they have that. What is it that you guys do in the gym just to give, the viewers an inside look?
Yeah, for sure. I think especially coming in, it was really important for me to like connect with the coaching staff and just like what kind of players are we actually recruiting, right? Are these like really big, strong, powerful athletes that we're going to hit for multiple base hits? Or what we do at Florida State is I just noticed a general trend from being there for so long that, hey, we usually have a lot of really fast people. So stealing bases, base running is like something that we really pride ourselves on. So, okay, like how can I adapt the training to that? It's kind of funny that you said that. We actually had like one of the football coaches came in. He was like, I've never seen so many girls look so different, but also so the same. Like, and so tons of unilateral stuff, tons of speed work, tons of med ball. So kind of taking away from that like traditional heavy power lifter status and almost going more towards like the sprinting side, because that for us has been something that's been really advantageous and successful.
Yeah, we can definitely tell a big difference because I get the opportunity to work with them in the off season. A lot of them,
Mm-hmm.
and man, they come in here. They're the strongest, fastest, most explosive girls that I've ever seen. So is that come from recruiting those type of girls with that intrinsic motivation that have been in the weight room before they get there, or it's obviously something that you're building there. I just think like you could probably agree with this too, Sierra. That's just where this game is going.
Yeah.
You look at the teams at the top level, they're in the weight room. That is a focal point of a program now.
What age group would you say is like really important to start, whether it's agility work, like
Mm-hmm.
not that they need to come in and be lifting, 200 pounds by the time they're 12, like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like maybe it's just agility work, footwork stuff. Like what
Mm-hmm.
age do you think like a lot of that growth really happens?
Yeah, I think in that like middle school and high school is when it really starts to happen. That's when kind of like athletes will be like, I'm gonna play college softball. And so a lot of times what I've noticed a trend is they'll almost get like too sports specific too early. They'll just like only focus on like softball stuff instead of being like, we always call like be brilliant at the basics. So like with athletes coming in, I would almost prefer that they're just really good movers. Like I truly don't care about how much they can lift. Like, can you move your body in multiple planes? Like, do we have really good form with everything we do? And then like if I get 4 years to develop you, which would be like a dream, right, without the portal and things like that, then we can like stack layers on top of that. But so just starting really, really basic with athletes around that middle school age, I think would be like that really good time. And so things at that age would just need to be more almost just like foot mechanics, like making sure everything's like really technical, exactly like how we want it to be. Because then as you get older, like that'll be so set in stone. Your foundation is so good
Right.
that then you can almost kind of like narrow in, like, all right, now I need to work on this.
Mhm.
Right. So now we have seniors that we know like exactly like this is what they need and this is how they need to train versus when they were 12, it can look kind of similar for everybody.
Do you feel like at all like with women and the way that their hips are, like do you feel like they have to work a little bit more on the agility stuff? Because I feel like sometimes like I've noticed when I work with younger athletes, I work with, let's say I'm middle school
Mm-hmm.
boy.
Yeah.
They seem very athletic already. Not that
Mm-hmm.
they haven't, because they're still growing into their body. They're still a little dorky, whatever, like
Yep.
we all are when we're younger. But then I feel like when it comes to like the girls, they have a little bit of a harder time with that. And I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know if it had anything to do with the hips, because I also know that like women are more prone to, knee injuries and stuff. A
Yeah.
lot of it has to do with the hips and everything like that. I didn't know if maybe like getting that stronger on
Mm-hmm.
women at a young age like might be helpful.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't sure if that was part of it.
Yeah, I don't know that I've necessarily just like been like directly at like the hips, but I totally see what you're saying. Like knee injuries, ACLs, things like
Mm-hmm.
that have been like super prevalent in like females over males. Just women in general are a little bit more quad dominant, so
Mm-hmm.
everything up top. So a lot of the training I'll do will always have a posterior, so like glutes, hamstrings, that kind of emphasis on
Yeah.
female athletes. But we also do a ton of like stability. Like, can we put you on one leg? Like, can we load you into the backside of your hip? So like even at a young age, I would like challenge like, can you load in the backside of your hip and like feel that weight transfer to the backside instead of like staying up tall through it.
Yeah.
Because I think that stability and like being able to stabilize on one leg is super super good as
It's
well.
movement pattern too. Like in here, if
Mm-hmm.
we get younger girls, you got to teach them, like you said, the basics first, so they're doing it right. Like especially with a squat, a lot of girls, right, since their hips are wider, their knees go into valgus just naturally because you got to give childbirth someday. So if you can put them in those good positions early on, like hey, proper squat, knees start to point out, don't let them track in. You're just going to support them better, and then you can watch them just how they move through us assessments in here. You probably do the same thing. Sure, they're a little bit older, and if they're at Florida State, they're probably more of an elite athlete. Just like see how they produce force. Does that knee cave in?
Mm-hmm.
Or do they have a strong posterior chain? So that's something we really focus on as well. And what I wanted to harp on too, or I wanted to ask you about that. Okay, Florida State, you are getting these elite top tier athletes. What from a whole, like now that you're dealing with, do they have weight room experience, most of the freshmen that go into the Florida State program?
Yeah, I think it's a really cool trend in just sports in general that almost all the freshmen, like not even just softball, but like specifically with softball, they'll always come in with some sort of background. And so the range of that, like Christina Hartley, who trains here, like, right, she was like next level already trained. So we can almost move fast past that, like GPP, like, all
Yeah.
right, like after I see her move for a little bit, I'm like, oh, like she's already like pretty next level. Cool. We can put her into a little bit of a different bucket. Then we get another athlete that, hey, they're a pretty good mover, but they just don't have a ton of weight room experience. So hey, they can start pretty novice and like pretty low on the skill set. And then we'll get in other athletes that have no weight room experience. I would say overall in general, especially like now, the trend is definitely like they'll come in with at least some experience. And what that experience was, that's kind of like up for me to like figure out.
Yeah.
So sometimes they'll be in weight rooms and they'll be like, oh yeah, I would just like squat like 300 pounds and
Mm-hmm.
put on my bag. So it's like, okay, like great, you're super strong, but like now let's kind of like break it down. Like let's make sure for the next 4 years you're healthy, because at the end of the day, that's all that I really care about. Is if coach can look down the line and pick from anybody because they're healthy and available, like that's a win to me. So
So what is this like the operating procedures then when you get everybody comes back for fall?
mm-hmm.
I suppose you take them through some sort of assessments, and then that's how you dictate your groups. What do those assessments look like?
Yeah, so we have a ton of technology at Florida State, which I recognize is a luxury that a lot of schools don't always have. But first thing we'll do is we'll get all of our athletes, we'll have Whoop. So softball athletes will all get a Whoop technology. So we're measuring strain, sleep, and recovery with that. And then every month I'll do like a monthly monitor check-in with the athletes. So I'll just see like how our bodies, how are we responding to training. So we'll do a baseline one. So that'll consist of a mid-iso thigh pull on force plates. We'll do a Nord board, so a measure of our hamstrings on that one. we'll do a Dari motion assessment. So the Dari motion assessment basically is pretty cool, guys. They'll light up their body like as a skeleton, and I'll take them through a bunch of different movements, and then the Dari kicks us out like some areas of emphasis for certain athletes. So it might be like, hey, it's your shoulder, your left hip, and your right knee, but for you, it might look completely different, which just allows me to have better insight to like connect with the athletes. So it's like, hey, this is how we're going to dive into some of your more accessory stuff, which is different than you because we both play softball, but you're different human beings. So I'll do that with all of the softball athletes, and then we'll do a broad jump, vertical jump, 20-yard dash, flying 10, pro agility, and then I'll just continue to check in with those same things just to make sure that we're getting better. Because obviously, as you get older in your training age, like we've all been there, right? You reach a point where there's just little margins that you're going to make those kind of gains versus when maybe you were a freshman. And so maybe we have to scale the training back, or maybe we need to jump into a different phase. And so that's kind of how I check in with it.
One thing we talk about is, especially with our app, we're always trying to get people to understand,
Mm-hmm.
hey, get on this now. You'll be more developed. You'll be ready to go. It's that thought process of, I'm not going in somewhere as a freshman and I'm going to sit. It's that thought process of, I'm going to go in as a freshman prepared and have the opportunity to start and not be like so far behind, right? Because if athletically you're just not there yet,
Mm-hmm.
and you're also not there on the power side, I feel like that's a lot more to have to like gain as a freshman that could, prohibit you from starting.
Absolutely.
So it's like if you come in pretty athletic already, like you're doing agility training, your
Mm-hmm.
strength is pretty much there. Like I feel like the athlete side, like that's what those coaches are there for, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they can really help you and like figure out what your like bread and butter is. So then maybe you could be a starter. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're not completely there on the like athlete side, what would you say is probably like the number one thing that you've noticed that the coaches are looking for with the athletes that are coming in? Like has there been something consistently you've seen? Is it just a mindset in the type of athlete? Like is it the work ethic? Like at least at Florida
Yeah.
State, I feel like they're pretty consistent in how they choose their kids.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of combination of like everything you just said. Like if you are an athlete coming into college and you're able to put yourself in a different bucket where you're athletically already there, then that's awesome. As a coaching staff, like I know that they just have so many meetings and like really break it down together that they can almost put you in a different bucket. Like, hey, now we can train you differently because you've already leveled up. So right, if you come in and you don't have all this like athletic performance like background that you guys have created, especially through that app, for somebody like they can come in, they're just gonna have to start in like a different bucket, and it would just be maybe a harder jump in there. But also to say Florida State's like really, really special place because they also put a ton of emphasis on like the mental side of the game, which is so huge. And so if you're an athlete that comes in and you're athletically already in a different bucket and mentally you're just like dialed in, you kind of like have a really good understanding of your bearings. And I think as a freshman that's so hard to do, to go to a different place, a different culture. And to me that's what Florida State's so special at, is like the culture of it. So like now if you have like a really elite mindset too, now you're like jumping into a different bucket where cool, now we all have to focus on is your softball skill set. Like
Yeah.
what an advantage to like just focus on softball now because
Well,
everything else is taken
that's
care
what
of.
we're talking about, right? The preparation. Like if
Mm-hmm.
these kids feel prepared, they can show up to a Florida State and feel like they're
Mm-hmm.
going to absolutely kill it. Does it mean they're going to kill it right away?
Yeah.
No. You're going to fail. You're going to have some problems. Like you're going to be tired, right? You're getting used to the new environment. But it's like if your preparation for college looks like exactly what we're providing and what we're doing now, I can't help but think that like that's going to go a long way with the coaching staff. Like you're going to recognize that in the athlete.
Mm-hmm.
The coaches are going to recognize that in the athlete, and I feel like that ultimately gives them also that confidence. So
Yeah.
like that
Absolutely.
mental, like they don't have that mental block, right?
Yeah.
They're more like, I know I can do this. I've been preparing.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean I'm going to get the results right now, but like I know that I can get there kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
it kind of also builds into that mental side that you're talking about, because I know you guys like harp into that mental
Oh
side a
yeah,
lot,
for sure.
because I think the one thing that a lot of athletes don't realize, it's like, yeah, I want to be faster, bigger, stronger, and I want to be really good on the softball field. But like those, what, 65 games that you play, whatever it is, like
Mm-hmm.
they become mentally draining, especially when you're not performing. And not
Absolutely.
everyone's going to always perform.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's probably one of the sides too, where I don't think people realize how much, like, even your preparation and your training consistently goes into also the mental side.
Yeah.
Because usually when you're getting mental, it's like, my performance sucks. Like now you're overthinking everything. Like, you know what I mean? You're
Mm-hmm.
just like, what's my swing doing? But it's like if you keep that preparation consistent and you're doing the same things, doesn't mean you'll get the result every
Mm-hmm.
time. But I feel like failure won't really feel like failure. It's just like a
Absolutely.
little
Yeah.
speed bump.
Yeah, because I feel like you've prepared yourself like for that performance. So like dealing with adversity would just be like easy to you at that point because you can just fall back on your training almost. So you're like, oh, I know this works for me. And then it's just all about like, if you're already mentally like locked in, then you just got to like stay in and like trust the process almost. So,
It's a cheat code. That's why we've built our app, and that's basically why I've built this. I always say, hey, we're buying you years back, because we said this before. What's the typical thing? You go to a university your freshman year, you sit out for 2 years, might redshirt your freshman year, and get a chance at playing your junior year. The whole goal, everything we're trying to create, hey, you can start to develop in high school. You can, mitigate that. Now when you show up on campus, you're like, oh shoot, I've been doing this. I'm used to this.
It's not
And
as
that,
scary as you
yeah,
think, but
yeah,
at
yeah, yeah.
that point. 'Cause,
yeah.
I mean, it's always scary.
It's not as scary as you think. And then just from, especially if you're doing the proper weight training like we have in the app, like we do in here, from a physiology standpoint, you're going to be lined up with those juniors, seniors. Now there's girls playing 7 years of college softball. So if you're a freshman going in at 18, you're trying to compete with a 25-year-old girl,
Yeah.
you have to figure out a way to hack the system to, gain a little bit.
You're playing with a woman.
You're playing with a woman.
100% she's grown. Yeah.
Seriously. So you have to, like, you can't wait. I always tell them a lot of girls, not all of them, but a lot of the consensus is, I don't want to start doing this stuff too early. I just want to play travel ball. Sure, go ahead and get your skill work in, but you need to fill what bucket's most important.
Yeah.
You got to get that physiology up there. You got to build that base.
And I don't think there is too early.
Yeah.
There's too early to be like, hey, you need to be able to, like, 12-year-old, you need to be able
Yeah.
to do, like,
Yeah.
50-pound dumbbells. Like, no, they're not
Yeah.
going to do that. But I feel like the athleticism is there. Like, there's such a huge gap still in baseball and softball.
100%.
And, like, it drives me absolutely crazy because, sorry, guys, I think that women are way more athletic. I just don't think that they, like, hone in on the skills like the way
Yeah.
that the guys do. And I feel like if they did, I mean, softball's already competitive and, like, we want it to, like, grow even more in college and then pro. But I'm just like, I just want them to buy in a little bit more because
Yeah.
it's just like I've seen what women can do when they actually go for it. I just feel like sometimes they don't because they're like, well, what do I have after this? Which I get that. I get it. But it's like, don't you want to, like,
Everybody wants to play at Florida State until it's time to play at Florida State.
yeah.
These girls that come in here and just, hit the cage with Steve-O, I try to talk to them about, signing up for our program, signing up for our services. Like, oh, I don't want to get too big. I don't want to get too bulky. And it's like, all right, then you don't want to play at Florida State. Like, you say you want to play at Florida State.
You don't want to be that good.
What's that going to take? Like, you have to make those sacrifices and you have to start now.
But it's not even being big and bulky.
No.
Like, I'm a professional athlete. I'm not big and bulky. The biggest I've ever been was probably like 155, which for me was pretty big because I was like 155 pizza and wings.
Yeah.
155.
Yeah.
That was when I was like doing USA softball during the
The good times,
summers. Like I just like didn't like I was playing softball constantly, not doing like the health side as much and strength side. But it's just like you don't have to be that. And that these other girls
They
in
won't.
college,
They
they're
won't
not.
ever. Yeah, they won't ever because they're not going to work hard enough to
Yeah.
get there. You know how hard it is to get bigger, especially
Yeah.
as a female, to add muscle mass? If you have that mindset, right, like there's no way you're going to work hard enough to get that big anyways. So, but that's all we're trying to do is just educate these girls that are just misguided, and just try to put them on a good path, create a blueprint for them. She's been there at the highest level. Talk to girls like you, that are at the highest level from a coaching standpoint. Hey, what do you expect out of these girls? And this is how they have to do. So my next question for you would be, what if you were a freshman in high school right now and your goal is to play at Florida State? What should they start doing right now?
If I was a freshman in high school, I would 100% start with like this side, like the athletic performance, and again, just like honing in on the little details of like all of your training, so you can really start building the base. Especially as a freshman in high school, this is an incredible time for you to like start building onto like the strength and speed and all of those components. Like, so by your senior year, you can be like, hey, I'm a really powerful, explosive athlete. So like now, as I go into a place like Florida State, like what a gift that like they're like, wow, this freshman coming in, like she's got the skills, like she's already with us. So again, like going back to that athletic performance side, like freshman year, incredible time to start. Like find a gym that you love to go to, that makes you like happy to train, that helps you fall in love with the process. I think a lot of times starting a freshman year, if your goal is like I just want to play like at the highest level possible. Like see a lot of burnout in that time because they just play softball, 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 like 6 games of softball. And then by the time your senior year, if you don't have any of the strength side, then you come and you're hurt or you have some sort of injuries or I do all the assessments with you and we're like, whoa, we got a lot going on with your body that we're gonna have to make sure because a lot of times what I'm seeing in those assessments is there's all sorts of imbalances in their body, right? So if we are just playing softball, which is super rotational sport, where they're all favoring one side, that if there's no balance out of that of some sort of strength training or athletic development kind of stuff, then we have to almost go back stages. So like even though they think that just playing softball has put them in this really high bucket, their actual body is breaking down, so we have to move them to a different bucket just to make sure they're healthy because it is really important to me that after 4 years of spending time with me that they also have the rest of their life to be a human being, and I recognize that they can fully do that to like their best of ability. So the best way to like not have any of those injuries would be to start strength training your body, and so I think that would be the incredible time freshman year of high school to get on the 32 approach app and just kind of phase out your training, make sure your senior year you're as healthy as you can possibly be, as powerful, as explosive as you can possibly be, so that you're ready to take that next step.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I know for me, like coming back from my ACL injury, like I was
Yeah.
really scared to do any agility training to the point where like I would avoid it, right? But even before like my ACL, I don't feel like I did maybe enough agility training. I think I focused a lot on being strong and everything else, and for whatever reason, I just didn't think that that was agility wise. And after college, like as a pro, like there's no one to guide you unless you hire someone or you find someone who really knows what they're doing. So you're kind of like going into it dark. And so what I think is so cool is like it's interesting because now that like my knee is the way it is, if I don't do anything, it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that's also very normal for anybody who doesn't have an injury as you're getting older.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't realize like how much working out and just moving,
Mm-hmm.
not saying you have to go lift 300 pounds and squat it,
Yeah.
like just doing something as simple as body weight,
Yeah.
lunges, like
Mm-hmm.
making sure you're flexible, like, and, but all that stuff helps you prevent injury.
Always.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you're doing that and you're stretching and you're doing yoga, whatever, things like that, like you're less prone to having those things happen to you
Mm-hmm.
as
Oh,
opposed to someone who's just like I'm gonna go hit and I'm gonna go do ground balls for like 5 hours. That's great, that's awesome,
Mm-hmm.
but
yeah.
that's not preventing injury. That's not gonna help you
It's
get
not.
stronger and
Yep.
be better in those specific things, hitting and defense.
If you don't use it, you lose it, right?
Yeah.
That's what we say. And then to only top on that, you only have your ceiling set so high. Too, you can contest to this. If all your time is the skill side, that's that cherry on top. That's fine and dandy, right? But you will reach that ceiling from a physiology standpoint that you need to raise doing stuff like this in the weight room, loading how, like learning how to load the body the proper way. So you can get bigger, stronger, faster to start that ceiling. That's why the pyramid, the famous pyramid that we go off of, is first you have to build the base, right? Your relative strength, all that, force production. And then on the top of that pyramid is your skill work. So there's physiology and there's skill work. That's how we train it, and we try to bridge that gap the best we can. But without it, the pyramid's flipped on itself, and you're beating a dead horse at that point. You're only going to get so good. Sure, you're going to naturally grow as you get older. Have different hormones and stuff, but you will reach that ceiling eventually. So the best way to do it is to build that base in the weight room, right, in that controlled environment, so that ceiling is just a whole lot better. Now your skill work means more.
When you are doing like any type of agility or strength training, like
Mm-hmm.
how much do you have them focus on like feeling things? Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
making sure they feel the activation in a certain spot
Mm-hmm.
or feeling like, hey, when you're doing this med ball slam into the wall, like I want you to feel that load like you would
Mm-hmm.
when you're hitting. Like what's that conversation like?
Yeah, I think that that's always a really good like coaching point for me. So I usually have all of our athletes like all in will be at one time. And so my goal, especially for this fall, is like, can I slow this down? Like, can we actually take our time and like feel? So we'll just like actually have a cue or like all do it together and be like, everybody load into our hit, feel. We'll slow things down. Like there's a time and a place to train like as explosively and as fast as possible. And like right now we're really focusing on like landing mechanics. Can we decelerate really good, right? Like, can we feel how our body is supposed to like transition from the back to the front? Can we get from this position to this position? Can we balance? Can we stabilize? So, like, taking time to do those things, I think is super important because it also just creates a ton of body awareness. It's like we're talking about like freshmen coming into college. A lot of times I'll see like freshmen that just they have no awareness of their body. Like, where am I? And like in a game where we're talking about like we have like 0 seconds to
0.
decide on stuff, right? I was gonna say 1 second. I was like, you don't even get that really sometimes. So it's just like, how can we have great awareness of our body and like, what am I really good at? Feel that, and then once they have that awareness of their body, cool. Now I'll send them to our hitting coaches, and then they'll take it up another level. Now, like, let's talk about like feeling things through hitting, feeling things through
I
defense.
think that like that's one thing that sometimes the younger generation they don't understand until they get to college.
Mhm.
And I just can't help but think of like the little monsters that would be developed in high
Yeah.
school if they just started to focus a little bit more on that side.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I know I didn't, and I
Mhm.
know that my strength and conditioning was nothing like it was, it is now for a lot of high schoolers.
Yeah.
I mean, the place I used to train at, which is like a really good elite place in California, STC with the Batbusters, we didn't have like the strength and conditioning that they have there now.
Mhm.
Like we did stuff, but like that was before strength and conditioning blew up. Like
Yeah.
it was really just stay healthy, do some arm care stuff, but like just play softball.
Mhm.
But now that's not it at all. They have a whole trainer there. They have the weight room set. They have everything
Yeah.
because they want to make sure that their kids don't get left behind. They're trying to develop elite athletes that can go play at Florida State at bigger schools. So it's like it's so interesting to me because like if I would have just focused a little bit more on the little things, I think, and how everything felt when
Mhm.
I was in high school and even in college, because I don't know that I did that in college either.
Yeah.
It was a different type of like weightlifting at the time. Like I just feel like development wise, I would have developed a little bit differently, like just strength. Like I was
Yeah.
already strong in college,
Mhm.
but some of that I think was just like God given talent and
Yeah.
like my parents. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
A little
I was
genetics in
yeah,
there.
like just some genetics there. But like I just can't help but think like, damn, like I could have been
Yeah.
way more stronger and even more explosive. And I already
Mhm.
was, but like I feel even better now than
Yeah.
I did when I was in college. So it's like part of me is like, dang, I wish I could go back to college real quick. 'Cause I feel like I'd hit
Yeah.
like
Let me just.
550, like I have all these like home runs or something. Like, it's just crazy because it's so different when you focus a little bit more. And you'll know if you are because you're mentally drained.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
you'll feel like you just took a test. Like after I lift here, I go home and I have to sit for like at least 30 minutes. And I'll like use those 30 minutes to eat because I'm like really tired because especially me, like I have to focus like on leg days because I don't feel it as much in my left leg as I do my right. So when
That's
he's
interesting.
telling me to like go down and do like, squat, like I'm like, okay, like I have to really think about how that feels and activating it now.
Especially with your imbalance because of your surgery.
Mhm.
So you have to do that. That's why, well, right now we're trying to work on the asymmetry. So we're trying to build size first
Mhm.
this offseason since we have so much time. So when you're trying to do that, like you got to really think, like I tell you every time, like try to flex the, quad, the VMO every time if we're doing a controlled leg extension, if we're doing a Bulgarian split squat, that's just going to help that. And then over time, as our program progresses, you're going to subconsciously start to turn that on. So now when we get on our force plates, we saw that you're producing a lot more force, on your opposite leg. Hopefully we can try to get that relationship a little bit cleaner, a little bit better. You're always probably going to have that imbalance, but the
Mine was
goal
pretty
is to
bad.
try, yeah,
It was pretty bad.
pretty
Yours was
bad,
Pretty bad.
pretty
What was
bad.
yours?
I was
But
like 30% more, am I right?
36%,
Oh, 36.
yeah, on overall on everything.
But
On everything.
I
Yeah.
would say though, we were closer to even
That's a
before I
lot.
left.
Yeah,
So before I left, I was like, it was good. I
Yeah.
think like once season started
Mhm.
and once I started to get a little bit tired, I started to go to the right more.
Yeah.
But what was impressive is like even though I was going to the right more, usually you'd think like my knee would start to hurt, my left knee.
Mhm.
I was not in the training room at all season.
yeah.
Like I felt totally fine.
That's from the work we put in. We did all the right things for you.
Mhm.
That's why I was surprised too to see the 30%. I was like, oh really? I mean, maybe I'm just tired.
Because
Like,
it was
Yeah.
probably 50
yeah,
before.
it probably was,
You
and
were
I
you
just
were
didn't
limping. Yeah,
realize.
you were walking along
Yeah.
with
Because
a
I mean,
limp.
that's what's so interesting too, because it's also the turf, right? Like the first 2 weeks of play there and practicing, everyone is hurting.
Mhm.
For me, my knee's hurting because it's getting used to playing on turf again, as opposed to like when I'm here, we're
Different
doing
feel.
stuff at the field on dirt, like it has a little more give
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So it's just interesting how your body reacts to everything. But it's just funny because like I tell these younger athletes all the time, especially if I'm doing camps or if I'm just talking and they're like, how do I get to where you are? Like I've told you guys a million times. I just don't think you believe me.
Yeah, they
It's
don't.
literally doing the littlest thing, like the
Yeah.
things that you probably are already doing, being consistent, right? And
Yeah.
that's why the
Mhm.
app, it's like we put this in the app so it tells you exactly what to do.
Mhm.
I'm a person, I need to be told exactly what to do. And
Yeah.
I know that about me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't have much self motivation when it comes to working out.
Yeah.
Like he has to get on me, or like someone else would have to get on me.
Yeah.
if I'm not doing it.
I would say
That's just how I am.
you're just in a boat of like many people that are like that.
Yeah.
So it's just like so amazing to just like open your phone and just be like, here's exactly what I'm gonna do. Like
Yeah.
it's already there for you. So literally all you have to do is just execute it at a high level.
You just have
Like,
to execute. Yeah.
you don't have to have any brain power to be like, oh, what am I gonna do today? Or you wake up and you're like, I don't really feel like doing some Nordic curls today because not a lot of people I feel like get excited about that. But then if it's on the sheet, I feel like all athletes would just be like,
You
well,
kind of feel like
that's
your
what I'm gonna
trainer's
do
right
today.
there telling you what to do. And
For sure.
even though like he wouldn't know if I didn't do something,
Yeah.
I can't do that because
Yeah.
it's kind of like coach,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Like it's like coach up. Like you would
100%.
be terrified to do that.
The
Yeah,
game
coach
knows
is gonna
that.
know. She's
The
gonna know.
the
game
game
knows.
No,
knows.
the game does know.
You guys should put
This is
that. Is
true.
that on the app? That should
We
be.
should put
on
that.
the
The
app.
game, hey, the game knows if you
Just
don't
at
do
the top.
this.
The
Yeah.
game
Yeah.
knows. Yeah.
But I feel like that was so helpful because when I was in season, I was in Chicago and
Mhm.
he was here, and I had asked him, I'm like, can you put together like the in season program for me?
Mhm.
I can't tell. Like my sister, like Sid, she every single time we wouldn't even be on the same team. She'd be like, "Hey, can I go to the gym with you?" Because she's the same way. She's like, "I want to see it. I need someone to tell me what to do."
Yeah.
So she would just go on the app, look at what it was, or we'd be doing it at the same time. So we'd be basically working out together. But that was the only way I could stay consistently in the gym.
Yeah.
Because I see it, there's video, like anything I don't remember, I'm not calling him like, "Hey, I don't know what this is."
Yeah.
It's right there on video. It's
Yeah.
me doing it, it's him teaching it. Like, so there was just never any question. And so I feel like having that is literally what kept me out of the training room.
Yeah.
This last season was the first season I've ever had in my entire pro career where I was not in the training room. I was living in there last year. This year, I literally went once and it was for a kink in my neck with how I slept.
Yeah.
So it had nothing to do
Hotel
with softball.
pillows.
It was literally, yeah, it was
Yeah.
the hotel pillows.
Just like we said, how doing this proper stuff at a young age can buy you back 2 years when you go in, you're ready to go. It can work the same way. It's like the fountain of youth for you.
Mhm.
We were prepping all off season, every single day. Doing it dialed in. She likes to say like she doesn't like doing stuff and that, but she always does it. She has that motivation.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, she's gonna do it.
Huge.
But it literally is that. It's the fountain of youth.
Mhm.
It bought you back. You felt your best. You were talking this year, like, I don't know how many years I got before I want to retire. Now it's like, heck, keep playing till you're 40. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, let's do it.
yeah.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Another question that I wanted to bring up is I hate saying, like, hey, one exercise guy, the best exercise for this, best exercise to build throwing velocity. But it is like a good catch on social media. Hey, do this exercise and receive, X. What are, say, like three staple exercises that you look for in your program that you're always trying to build, progressively overload at? Like, if you could pick three off the top of your head.
3 off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Huge unilateral squat fan
Yep.
of any sort of variation. RFE split squats, eccentric, ISO, transformer. We have transformer bars at Florida State, so transformer bar, split squat, reverse lunge, anything on one leg. Awesome. I would have my second pick be just regular sprinting, just like in some sort of phase, just being able to put your max force in the ground, which I know like not everybody is runners by the time that they get to me. We've had like some kids that come in that running has already been taken away from them and they're like due to injuries and things like that. But I do think sprinting is just incredible for your body, for your overall health. And then I think my third one, I would say med ball work
Yeah.
of any kind, just like phased out like in a progressive sense, but it's just like so incredible for your body. You can do so much with it that is like so valuable, whether you're like hitting focus, like we can do pitching specific stuff with it, we can do hamstring stuff with it. So just any sort of med ball variation.
Yeah.
I feel like I could go forever on that question.
Med ball variations are huge in our program as well here. It's that
Nice.
bridge to sport. That's the way. Every time they grab a med ball, I try to get them in the proper positions, like with their lower half, how they would in the swing, how they would with the throw, and that's like the best transfer that I've seen. But I've seen big time transfer in the unilateral work, because a lot of people come in, they may be able to back squat if it's 315, heck, if it's even 400 pounds. But if you get them on a single leg, they're unstable. They can't even, do the bar.
That was me.
Yeah, that was you.
When I first came in,
Really?
I could not do single leg stuff.
Have
But
you
I
done
thought I
it
could.
previously?
Mm-mm.
Too?
I was all so previously was like I was always about range of motion,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like I would do front squats, back squats, and I would literally almost sit like butt to the ground and work on getting out of that with weight on, like a safe amount of weight. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like I was like maxing out or anything like that,
Yeah.
but it was very much like trying to work through breaking cartilage in my knee, like just trying to like work through that stuff. So it was like that was such the focus that I knew I was getting stronger. I was strong. Like I was like good, I could perform, but I didn't realize how like unstable I was. Cause when he had me do split squats
Mm-hmm.
and I went and I had my leg, I could barely like hold myself there. Like I
Yeah.
was shaking so bad. He I remember you were like, yeah, throw on 45 each side, you'll be good. I was like, no, bar, like just bar. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, I can't, like, I
Let's bring this
literally can't
back.
do it. And he
Yeah.
was like, okay, yeah. Like, I literally had to start with just the bar.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
But it's a single leg sport. You look at softball, single leg sport. You have your gas leg, you have your brake leg. Both legs do not work the same. So that is been the cheat code. Hey, let's get our unilateral relative strength up first and foremost. Let's see what happens, and then that's how you start building that base and seeing. And there's a lot of times, right? Like we won't do a trap bar deadlift for 8 weeks, 10 weeks. We just work on our single leg stuff, and then when we start introducing trap bar deadlifts, you're like, holy rip, like this is going up like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's unilateral stuff is always going to transfer over to your bilateral stuff, from what I've known. And your bilateral stuff doesn't necessarily transfer over to your unilateral stuff. So when you do that, you're building up everything. Just like wide stances, I've found out. Like we can get pretty detailed here, but I found out everything from a wide stance. I don't know if you've figured this out, like sumo stuff always transfers to like more narrow, but as you're more narrow, pulling stuff like that, it will not transfer to the wider you get. So that's a lot of stuff why we do wide stuff on the belt squat. It's always sumo. Get real wide, get as deep as you can early on in a program.
To close it out for them, if you had like maybe one big piece of advice, and it could be on the strength side, it could be
Mm-hmm.
just on anything that you've seen being at Florida State. Like obviously that's a good winning program. Like what is like the number one piece of advice that you would give to
Yeah, you're at the
athletes
upper
watching this?
echelon as a strength
Yeah.
coach going through school. The goal is to work at a program like that, Florida State.
Yeah.
You've reached it. You're doing, the dream that you've been to school.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it could be for an aspiring strength coach, right? An aspiring athlete trying to get into this field. Like what would be that advice?
I think for an aspiring athlete, I would just say to continue to work like really consistently, like show up, like find a program like the 32 approach, like find something that you're really passionate about that you can stick to and do it day after day. Like keep your body as healthy as you can, using strength, athletic performance as your foundation, build that foundation. So that would be my advice to athletes. I think my advice to like strength coaches or other people is just like have super low ego and just like take in all the information that you possibly can. Like I've met you one time and I was like, hey, I want to come down and talk shop, right? Just like reach out to people and just like never stop trying to grow in this field because strength training is just something that's always adapting and there's like always new things coming out or better ways to do certain things. So that's important to me that I can always learn that so then I can better take care of my athletes. And I think at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and it's getting buy-in. You've done a really good job of getting buy-in from all your athletes. Everybody I talk to loves you. You know what I mean?
They're
All of your
wonderful.
athletes love you. That's so hard to do as a strength coach because I've seen it. You know what I mean? It's very hard to get that buy-in. All it takes is one girl on that team. If you're doing something weird, they're like, "Hey, why the heck are we doing this? We're not football players. Like this is a football
Yeah.
exercise." It literally takes that one person to destroy that whole team dynamic.
So that's why I think like the buy-in part is like
Mhm.
so important because these athletes they come in and if you're not buying into whatever that program is doing, like you're
Mhm.
not going to get better because
Yeah.
that's like
Yeah.
a mental block right there. Like you
Absolutely.
not buying in it has nothing to do with what you physically can or can't do. It's just like practice, right? Coach tells you to dive and you're like I can't dive. No, you can. You don't
Mhm.
want to. Like you're choosing not to.
Yeah.
So that buy-in, I feel like that tells you a lot about a program because those are the programs that are going to excel because everyone's buying in. Doesn't mean you have to understand everything, but you don't have to question every single thing. You have,
Yeah.
you can definitely ask questions to better understand something.
Mhm.
But when you are asking questions because you're trying to go against what is happening, that creates a whole other block. So I think the fact that you guys have that buy-in and you have it specifically with your athletes in the weight room, I mean, that's why they're as strong as they are. Like
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
there's no question. Like that has to be it.
You,
Yeah, I feel extremely fortunate because I think the coaching staff has done an incredible job of just like building the culture, and so something that's like able to be repeated like year after year. But I also think like athletes just like value clarity. So like what you're able to do, like when you guys train, is just like provide like, hey, this is why we're doing this. Like this is exactly like what we're doing, and like this is where we're gonna go with that. Like that's always my goal too, is just to be like, hey, this is the exact plan for today. Just like create a lot of clarity around what we're doing. Like, and so they know like week after week, all right, like now we're leveling up, now we're adding layers. And so they can buy into the training because they're just super aware of what's happening to their body. And then when they actually start to feel good and they're like, oh, and I'm healthy and I'm performing out there, then it's just like, oh, I'm in it. Like now let's do it together. And I think that's special.
And I feel like that's what we have with the app, and that's why it's so special is we provide you those opportunities to excel at an elite level. So get on the 32 Approach app, check out the Secret Sauce podcast, and we'll catch you guys next time.